Tonight, when you fall asleep, you might fall from a building you do not recognize. You might drown in water that was never there. Someone might be chasing you, and no matter how hard you run, your legs feel like they are made of wet sand. Or you might wake up at 3 in the morning, certain that something is standing in the corner of your room, watching you, saying nothing. Here's the strange part: you did not invent any of this. A farmer in ancient Mesopotamia likely had the same dream. A teenager in Tokyo had it last week. Somewhere right now, while you read this, hundreds of millions of people are falling, drowning, running, or being watched, all at the same time, in their sleep, in countries that have never spoken to each other. That is not coincidence, that is design. For a long time, scientists assumed nightmares were random noise, leftover static from an overworked brain at the end of a long day. But in the 1960s, a psychologist named Calvin Hall began collecting and coding thousands of dream reports from ordinary people, looking for patterns nobody had bothered to count before. Decades later, researcher Patricia Garfield went further, gathering dreams across continents and cultures with little or no contact with one another. And in report after report, the same handful of nightmares kept surfacing: falling, drowning, being chased, being watched in the dark. These were not personal quirks, they were universal. So, why does almost every human brain in every area reach for the exact same four nightmares? The answer starts with a Finnish cognitive scientist named Antti Revonsuo, and it reframes nightmares completely. Revonsuo proposed something called threat simulation theory. His argument is simple but unsettling. Your brain did not evolve to give you peaceful dreams. It evolved to keep you alive, and one of the cheapest, safest ways to rehearse surviving danger is to simulate that danger while your body is paralyzed and harmless, lying flat in a bed, far from any actual cliff, river, or predator. Think about what your ancestors genuinely feared for hundreds of thousands of years, long before cities or locks or streetlights existed: falling from a tree or a cliff edge, or a rocky ledge while foraging, drowning while crossing a river to reach water or food, being hunted by something faster, stronger, and far better adapted to killing than you were, being watched by a predator hidden just past the edge of the firelight, patient, waiting for the fire to die down. These were not abstract anxieties, they were daily odds of survival, repeated for generation after generation after generation. Your brain still runs that exact same software, it just never got the update. Start with the falling dream because it is usually the first one people remember from childhood. Right as you drift off to sleep, your muscles begin to release tension all at once. Your heart rate slows, your breathing evens out into something slow and rhythmic. And right in that transition between waking and sleeping, many brains briefly misread the sudden drop in muscle tension as actually falling. The full body twitch that often follows even has a name: the hypnic jerk. Some sleep researchers trace this reflex all the way back to tree dwelling primates, where losing muscle tone at exactly the wrong moment meant losing your grip on a branch. A fall back then was not symbolic or metaphorical, it was frequently fatal. Your nervous system, just to be safe, still jolts you awake first and asks questions later. Now take drowning, which is stranger because there is usually no water anywhere near your bed. Breathing naturally becomes shallower and more irregular during REM sleep, the stage where most vivid dreaming happens. If your airway narrows even slightly, or you shift position, and your breathing feels briefly restricted, your brain does not file that sensation under minor inconvenience. It reaches instead for the oldest, most urgent fear template it has stored away: water closing over your face, lungs burning, no air reaching you in time. It is worth noting that drowning dreams spike noticeably in people who have sleep apnea, which makes sense because that is exactly when real breathing is being disrupted in the body. Then there is being chased, which shows up more often in dream studies than any other single nightmare theme across nearly every country researchers have surveyed. And honestly, that tracks. For most of human history, the difference between living to see another sunrise and not living at all often came down to one specific skill: outrunning whatever was hunting you. Your legs feeling heavy and slow in these dreams is not random sabotage either. During REM sleep, your body enters a state called REM atonia, where your major muscles are essentially switched off so you cannot physically act out your dreams. Your mind is sprinting, your body quite literally cannot follow. And finally, the one that feels the most personal, the hardest to explain away as just biology: the dark figure standing in the corner of the room. This particular nightmare sits right at the edge between dreaming and waking. In a state researchers call sleep paralysis, your brain can drift into a REM like dreaming state while your body is still locked in that same muscular paralysis that normally keeps you safely still through the night. For a few terrifying seconds, you become aware enough to see your actual room, the actual ceiling, the actual shape of your own doorway, but your body will not move, no matter how hard you try. A researcher named Balan Jalal has spent years specifically studying this experience, interviewing people across different cultures who describe almost identical encounters. He found that during sleep paralysis, the brain's threat detection system, centered in a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala, goes into overdrive precisely while you are unable to move, unable to escape, unable to verify anything with your own eyes in the dark. Your brain, sensing danger but receiving almost no new sensory information, fills in the blank the same way it has filled it in for thousands of years across every culture studied. It assumes something is there, watching, waiting, standing exactly where you cannot quite focus. This is not a haunting, even though it feels like one in the moment. It is your oldest alarm system firing at full volume with nothing real in front of it to point at. Here's the part that should genuinely change how you feel about all of this. Sleep researcher Matthew Walker describes REM sleep as a kind of overnight therapy session for your emotions. During REM, the stress hormone noradrenaline drops to its lowest level of your entire day. Even while the emotional centers of your brain light up at full intensity, you get to feel fear completely and vividly without the real chemical stress response that would normally come with it. You are rehearsing danger inside the one laboratory that was ever actually safe enough to practice in. Neuroscientist Alan Hobson, one of the pioneers of sleep science, described dreaming as your brainstem firing in essentially random patterns through the night, while your forebrain, the storytelling, meaning-making part of you, scrambles to weave that chaos into something coherent using whatever fears, faces, and memories happen to be sitting closest to the surface that night. That is why an ordinary worry about a deadline or a tense conversation with someone you love, or a small fear you barely registered during the day, can get translated overnight into the ancient language of falling, drowning, chasing, and watching. Different costume, same underlying script. So your brain is not malfunctioning at 3 in the morning. It is doing precisely what it was built to do millions of years before you existed, before cities, before electricity, before locks on doors. Back then, the world genuinely was full of cliffs, rivers, predators, and darkness, hiding something with teeth. Your nervous system simply never received the memo that most of that danger is gone, which raises a slightly uncomfortable question. If your brain still rehearses falling off cliffs you will never stand near, and drowning in rivers you will never cross, what exactly is it preparing you for now? Probably the same thing it always was, just wearing a different face. Falling mirrors, losing control, drowning mirrors, feeling overwhelmed in over your head, unable to catch a breath in your own life. Being chased mirror situations you cannot seem to escape, no matter how fast you try to run from them. Being watched mirrors, feeling exposed, judged, unsafe, even when nothing visible is actually threatening you. Your ancestors needed to survive lions and floodwaters and starless nights. You need to survive deadlines, conflict, uncertainty, and the quiet dread of not feeling in control of your own life. Your brain, lacking a newer template for any of that, simply hands you the oldest one it has on file. That is the real twist hiding underneath all 4 of these dreams. They were never really about the cliff or the water or the figure in the corner. They were a translation. Your sleeping mind took something abstract, something modern, something difficult to even name while you are awake, and gave it a shape your body has understood for hundreds of thousands of years. So tonight, when you fall asleep, you might fall from a building you do not recognize, but you will not be broken when it happens. You will simply be exactly what every human before you has been on a night like this one. A mind built by ancient danger, still rehearsing survival, still keeping watch long after the watching stopped being necessary, and still, somehow, setting you down safely awake on the other side. So here's a question for you. Which one of these 4 do you have the most? Falling, drowning, being chased, or being watched by something in the dark? Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious how common each one really is among the people watching this right now, and if there is a why that has been sitting quietly in the back of your mind, something you have always wondered about but never actually looked up. Tell me that too. That is exactly what this channel exists for. I will be back soon with another Curious Everyday Why. Until then, have a good night and sweet dreams. Hey, you are still here. That's great. Watch the next Curious Why video. Also subscribe if you like the work. Thank you for watching.